Welcome to day two. Our first presenter today is going to be Todd. He's began his career in 1981. He's got 40 years of experience. He's been in the top 100 golf magazine and the top 50 Golf Digest list. He's received multiple Teacher of the Year or Horton Smith Awards, or whatever the Horton Smith is called now, I forget. He's authored over 100 articles and 4 books, developed the scoring zone short game system, and patented the tri-fit system for custom fitting putters, significantly improving players' abilities, skills, and lowering the scores. We've actually had him here in San Diego many years ago when I got to know him at the Golf Academy. He did one of our events, and he's an innovator in putter fitting. And welcome. Thank you.
Sean, am I on? Yeah, I am. Okay, great. Well, first of all, it's great to be here. I'm very thankful to be able to share my experiences with you guys. I'm thankful to Randy and Sean and Nikki for inviting me. And I want to share my experiences to help you help your people. That's the bottom line. I love doing things like this. Let me start with this. Let me ask you a question. If you started writing down everybody's index that you gave a lesson to, the first time you gave them a lesson, and they weren't going to come back unless you lowered their index, would you teach the same way that you teach today? I had to ask myself that question. To give you my background a little bit, I started like everybody as an assistant upstate New York, so where I grew up. I moved to Texas, was an assistant there for 5 years. Then I moved to Lake Forest, Illinois, and I was the teaching assistant at the Onwinsia Club, and then I was the director of golf at Conway Farms, Lake Forest. That took me through 1996. So 1997, I really, the time that I was at Conway, I liked everything. I liked business. I owned the golf shop. It was lucrative. It was a nice job, but I loved teaching. I loved helping people. So I just decided to pivot and start my own golf school, which I started in 1997. Now, that first summer, I realized to make a decent living, I had to spend a lot of hours on that lesson tee, as you all know, if you do that, right? 8, 9, 10 hours a day. And I thought, man, this is going to kill me, and I'm not going to do a really good job raising my sons if I continue on this path. So I started to build a program. And the first guy I hired was Michael Klein, and he started with me in 1998. So my first assistant, well, in 6 years I had a full staff. I had 5 full-time teachers, and it's a regional school like you would have here. So in Chicago, it's not a destination where people are flying in to take golf schools. It's a regional school. So you're trying to build relationships and having people retain, come back and take continuing lessons. And about 2 years into it, I realized I wasn't lowering scores. Too many people were coming back and saying, I'm hitting the ball better, I'm striking the ball better. And I would ask them what they'd shoot and what their score was, and I wasn't seeing enough, progression. And pretty soon I would realize, after people got to a point where they're hitting the ball pretty well and their scores started to plateau, they weren't getting better, and pretty soon they wouldn't come back. I mean, you might have a student for 6 months. If you're not at a country club and they're coming to you, you got to remember in Chicago, people are driving from Chicago, it's a half day. A lesson is a half day. So it's an hour to get to me. It's maybe an hour to take a lesson. It's an hour to get home. That's a big investment of their time. And so you really have to have results if you expect them to keep coming back. And what I mean by that is results in the scorecard. That's what I care about. So I really pivoted from being just working on full swing to trying to work on all parts of the game. And so when I assess a student, I try to think about the potential of where they can really improve. And that sometimes means equipment. I look in someone's bag. We'll talk about putters today, but I think everything. I'm making sure that my students have the right equipment to play the best golf that they can play. That's my job, not someone else's job. But anyway, I started to really think about how much time I was spending helping people with 40% of their score, which is putting, and 30% of their score, I heard yesterday 2/3, I think that's appropriate, on the short game. And I realized, I was spending, and I've been on the national teaching and coaching committees and currently on the summit committee, and I know that 90-something% of all instruction is full swing. And yet, these amateurs, they need help in putting and short game, and I realize they're not coming to us saying, I need help in those areas, but we need to encourage them to take that instruction. I'll talk about that in a little bit. So bottom line is I started to really engage in putting instruction and short game instruction. And I can tell you until 1997, or really 99 is when I really started to focus on those areas. I didn't give many lessons in putting and short game, right? It might be at the tail of a full swing lesson where I'd watch someone hit a few putts, and not really a full-on putting lesson where I'm videotaping someone looking at their putting stroke. And so what I want to do today is kind of share those experiences with you and kind of how I came up with this whole system and why, to me, it's very important. I don't know how you could fit a putter if you don't know how to teach putting. And I don't know how you could teach putting if you don't know how to fit a putter. They go hand in hand to me. There's a marriage between, I call it fitting through instruction. I'm a big believer that golf professionals should be the ones that are fitting equipment, right? Because we know how the golf club is supposed to move and how the person is supposed to set up and such. So anyway, that's my goal today, and we'll have some time to get into some questions. And I think versus me just, I've done a lot of presentations where I'm on a stage and I'm going through a PowerPoint. When they said to do this live lessons, I just thought this will be great because, all this stuff, hopefully a lot will come out just naturally as I give live lessons. So Randy, let's introduce and we have time for questions. I mean, I think one of the great things about things like this is Q&A. So as we go through, if I can answer any questions, let's do it. So let's pull up our first person.
I've randomly going to see who has their putter right now. Selenade, you have your putter, don't you? Why don't you come up and be our first volunteer?
Can you guys tell that was a little staged? Oh, by the way, you might have a putter. Yeah.
Random.
Now, I've never met her. I got to say this.
Yeah. So it's the first time they've met.
Hi, Todd.
Selenay.
Selenay?
Yep.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah. So I'm just going to treat this, what we have to do is kind of forget about them and just it's you and I, right?
Okay.
I'm going to treat this like just a real lesson. So
Perfect.
tell me a little about your game and your putting and your score and everything if you could.
Well, I have 2 little kids and don't play much anymore, but
We've done that, right? Everybody can relate to that, yeah?
Yeah.
Good.
So I played on Epson and a little bit of LPGA for almost 9 years.
Yeah, good.
So I play maybe 10 rounds a year, maybe a little more.
Yeah.
I
But
practice.
so how is putting? How has putting been for you in the past?
Generally pretty good, but now I've, for whatever reason, putt with, I'm not sure if you want to call it a claw grip, but
Yeah.
that's what I'm doing. Never did that when
Yeah.
I played.
There'll be different opportunities for me to pivot and talk about different things. I think the claw grip is great. I've had some students that, when they have that twitch in their right hand and you've done everything mechanically to get rid of, sometimes I think the twitch is fundamental, like the right arm might be stuck or something like that. You've done everything you can do to get rid of the twitch mechanically, but they still have a twitch. Nothing wrong with the claw. I've had a number of students that I've switched to a claw, and it's really helped them stabilize the putter, so I think that's totally fine. I don't think it matters. Like, as far as grip goes, I mean, when you watch on the tour, you can see so many different grips and ways. We're trying to find a way for the person that's in front of you to putt better than they putt, right? So I'm very open-minded to that, and there's things I like, and there's things that are flexible, and then there's, you've got to be flexible, bottom line. So claws.
So I feel like when I was playing and practicing, I can keep my bad habits in check doing drills.
Yeah.
And that's probably why now I just putt with the claw.
So let's talk about your bad habits. What would your tendencies be?
I always said I would kind of hit a draw with my putts.
Yeah, so inside out, kind of close the face.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's interesting right away when she says that, like this is a face balanced putter, right? So right away I'm thinking, that doesn't really match up with that type of stroke, right? But anyway,
Yeah.
so I'll tell you what we're going to do.
I didn't use this kind of putter when I played either.
You didn't.
I had a blade.
So what made you switch to this?
I don't remember.
Okay. And fit for you, because it's been cut down, right?
Yeah.
A little bit, yes? Yeah. So, and this will be interesting too. Let's talk a little bit about women in golf and teaching. So, we have a professional, someone who played professionally and at a high level. So a lot of the women at your club, what putters, where do you think that they got their putter? Who said that? What'd you say?
From their husband.
Exactly. They get their husband's hand-me-down putter. Here, I putted like crap with this, so you putt with it, right? And so that's how a lot of women now, and the amazing thing about the growth, the biggest demographic that's growing in golf is women, if you watch that stuff. So we have a lot of women out there putting with putters that don't fit them. They've never been fitted. Well, a lot of men, but it's really prevalent with women because they're putting with putters that were probably, a lot of them are too long. And then they're developing their stroke based on a putter that creates their setup that then creates the stroke. So there's huge opportunities. You know, if I was back at Conway Farms, I can tell you right now, I'd be doing a lot of putting clinics for women specifically and helping them with their putters. We've had huge success in that demographic. So, but here we've got a professional that's been, I can already tell, you know, as many fittings as I've done with length, I can look at height, and when someone walks up, I size up leg length. I've just done that. I've done it thousands of times now. So, you know, sometimes you get someone with long legs, long arms, and you can kind of see that the more putting you do. And I already have a sense this putter's going to fit really well. But let's watch. Hit some putts for me. Right? We're going to come over here, and obviously we'll do our best to kind of talk through this. And I've got a screen up here, which is great. It's an outdoor screen, but it's a little small, and I'll try to point out some things. I've got some tour players on here. I've spent a lot of time with tour players. Actually, let me ask you this. This is a really important question. When you putted your best, where was your mind? What were you thinking about?
Not on my putting.
Pardon me?
Not on my putting.
Yeah.
I mean, it was, anytime you play your best round, it just happens.
Yeah, exactly.
When the moment you try to
yeah.
recreate it.
So, you know, like I spent a lot of time, especially in the 90s, with tour players. And, you know, before my sons got to the age where I just didn't want to travel. But at any rate, I never had a conversation with someone after a great round of putting where they said, I was thinking mechanics. I just never heard that. I never heard them saying I was taking the putter inside, I was taking the putter straight back, I was closing the toe. I never hear all the things that I hear commentators say when they observe someone that's putting well. Their mind is not cluttered with stuff. So the way I approach putting is to really look at someone's setup. If I see a flaw, a pattern in a putting stroke that's a problem and where someone can't roll the ball consistently off the face. You know, I have a sand putt lab, and frankly, I don't use it that much. I don't use it because, and I take issue a little bit with someone says, well, it can be anything, but it's got to be consistent. Well, if the ball's consistently rolling like crap, I'm like, nah, that doesn't, because I'm consistently cutting across a golf ball, then I want that ball to roll straight. So I start with putting instruction on making sure that the person can put a good roll in the golf ball. There's 4 legs. The way I think about putting, there's 4 legs to being a great putter. Roll the ball straight, that's first. Then speed control, that's second. Then reading greens, that's third. And then alignment, that's fourth. And often people look at alignment first because that's the most obvious thing you can see. It's like, oh, you're lining up to the right. But if you see something in a stroke that's causing the ball to go to left and you try to fix the alignment, you really haven't helped the person. They actually need to line up to the right to make the putt. So I always roll the ball straight. I'll share this story. So a guy was coaching Chip back, 1993. We were getting ready for the Ryder Cup, and he was aiming way right. We're on the range at Conway Farms. He was slinging the golf ball way left, and I'm like, Chip, you're aiming way right. We got to work, get the alignment rods down. He turned around to me and he said, look, when my gun shoots straight, I'll aim it. And that was that always stayed in my mind. I'm like, he was saying to me, get the curve out of my golf ball. I'm aiming because I need to aim over there to get the ball to where I want it to go. So I always think about rolling the ball straight, hitting the ball straight, getting side spin under control, and then alignment comes after that for me. That's the way I kind of look at it. So let's just hit some putts here. Just do your thing and I'll watch. I'd like you to go to that hole right there. Oh. So we got a little bit of break.
Do all the things?
Yeah.
And go a little left. Speed right.
Todd, when you start this, do you try to do a straight putt, or it doesn't matter? Like,
you know, I'm looking at how that ball's rolling off the face, and here's something that may be helpful to you guys. Yeah, there's a lot of break. Here's something that maybe, well, here 2 things come to my mind. So my son, Owen, he's actually in the PGM program at Florida Gulf Coast. He wants to be a teacher, imagine that. But he caddies, he's an honor caddy at a club called the Ivanhoe Club in the summer, and he's like, Dad, when I read a green, And I tell the guy the putt is going to break this much and point out his start line. And the guy hits it off the toe in the face, and the ball's going like this. And then he looks at me and said, I didn't miss, what do I do? I said, I don't know what you do in that situation. But anyway, you're rolling it really good. But
That's why I could never caddy.
yeah, he didn't like that. But anyway, so I have my phone in my back pocket a lot of times when I'm teaching. And a lot of people, like, yes, I'm established at teaching putting in Chicago, so I get some people coming to me just for putting instruction. That's not the bulk of people that I give putting lessons to. They're people that come and they want to work on their golf swing. They want to hit the ball better. And my staff, like I said, retainment is really important, getting people to come back, and the only way that's really going to happen over a period of time is if you're lowering their score substantially. And so if someone comes to me for full swing work, which that's what most do, and I'm working with their full swing, it won't take long for me to pull the putter out of their bag. I look at them, I look at the putter, and I'm like, that's a mismatch. I know that right away. And so my opinion is do not ask people if they putt well, because most people say, yeah, I putt fine, because they really want to work on their golf swing. So I don't even give them a chance to tell me that they're good at putting, because I know they're not. So I pull out my phone, and I do exactly this. So go ahead and hit another putt for me.
I'm going to aim right this time.
Yeah. I just put my phone right behind the putter. Hang on a second. Whoops. Okay, go for it. Okay, and so, nice putt. So we'll look at this, and this is what I do with people. You can't believe how many people, if you do this with your phone, are going to hit toward the toe of the putter because they're side swiping it. Even if they have a good backstroke, they're coming out of their putt. But anyway, I just show them this, and this is interesting because I'm not asking them. I didn't ask them if they can putt well. I just said, let's look at your putter head hit the ball, right? And so, what do you think?
It looks toey.
Toey, right?
Yeah.
How about that, right? But so right away, now I've got her attention because it's about her impact, and that was a good putt, but it was about ½ inch off the center of the putter. And at that point, I do this at the end of a lesson. And I'm like, we can make that better. The next time I see you, I think it would be really beneficial if you take a putting lesson. So I didn't ask them if they were a good putter. I just showed them. To be an effective teacher, a lot of times you have to bring the problems, expose the problem, and then become the solution to the problem, right? But if they don't know there's a problem, they're probably not going to ask you for help in that area. But now you're like, okay, I'm hitting the toe. Let's figure that out, right?
I do hit draws.
Yeah, right. So anyway, let's get that thing rolling better. So that's what we first see, like inner putting stroke. And this is basically a very good putting stroke. And so when you're working with especially a tour player, I'm a big believer in micro changes, right? So if you can do the smallest thing you can do to get the progress you want, great. Most amateurs, it's not micro, it's major, right? But when you're working with really good players, try to make the smallest. If they're a decent putter, a good putter, obviously someone that's really struggled like Lucas Glover, he really had to change everything to get a different perspective mentally, like Parker was talking about yesterday. But keep that in mind. It really depends on how good someone is and what their stats are and all that when you work with better players. Okay, so now let me really get into this. So let's hit a couple more putts. Let me really watch closely.
I'm not going to hit on this toe.
Okay, so I'm just going to show you. I'm going to come over here. We're going to look at this screen. Actually, come over here. We're going to look at this screen. You guys, hopefully you can see that screen. Okay, so there's some major things I look at in the setup, and I'll kind of go through these real quickly. So the things I look at in the setup, and again, I'm trying to figure out in the setup what's causing the problem in the stroke. So in the setup, I'm looking for eyes in relation to the golf ball. My preference is to have someone's eyes kind of close to the inside edge of the golf ball, a little bit inside of that to center at most. I've never seen a good putter with their eyes past a golf ball. I've seen really good putters. Scotty Cameron, the time I've spent with him in his studio, he's told me that he finds the best players are an inch inside the center of the golf ball. That's inside edge, right? Within that realm. So I look at the eyes, and I think that makes sense. I'm a common sense person. It's like if I'm shooting a gun, I'm going to have my eyes over the rifle sights. I'm not going to go to the side and expect to aim really well optically. And I know there's different opinions about that. We'll talk about eyes when they get too far inside and the effect that that would have on the natural stroke. Remember, I'm going for natural. Natural is when the putter swings naturally, and that means that I am not thinking about the mechanics. I'm just letting the putter swing. When it swings naturally, right, where does it go? So if someone shows up to you and they've got, they're set up kind of like this and the putter's going outside, your lesson to them could be, that putter's going way outside, you're swiping it. You need to bring the inside, the putter more to the inside on an arc, release the toe. And the problem is that setup the putter will not naturally, they're going to have to make the putter, which means if they have to make the putter do something it doesn't naturally do, they're going to have to think about the mechanics of their stroke while the putter's swinging. And we just said at the beginning, we know, and you've putted well. When you've putted well, you're not thinking mechanically. So don't give lessons, in my opinion, don't give lessons that make people mechanical. So if I look at someone's setup, and their eyes are past it, their hands are in here, their shoulders are open, and the putter's, of course, it's naturally going outside, I'm not going to fix the stroke. I'm going to fix the setup. I like to say, ask why till you can ask why no more. The solution is never in the what. What the putter's doing is going outside in. TrackMan may tell you that someone's coming across the line, plus or minus, steep or shallow. That's only giving you the what. No one gets better with information about the what. People play better when you give them solutions. And if you can boil those down to, I always say, simple feels work a lot better than complex thoughts. If I just expose a problem and I don't give someone at the end of the lesson a simple feel of what they can feel and how they can set up in their pre-shot routine, I'm probably not going to help them perform very much better. Okay, so eyes over the inside edge of the golf ball. The other thing I look at, what controls path? What controls the natural path is the shoulders in relation to the target line, start line, and the hands in relation to the shoulders. So if I see someone set up and their shoulders are open or closed, I'm going to see a natural path. If they're following their shoulder line, that's a problem. If I see someone with their hands outside of their shoulders, right, natural path would be inside. If I see them inside of their shoulders, natural path would be outside. So I'm really trying to get the shoulders square at address. At impact, I do believe there's a slight shoulder rotation during the stroke, but at impact, I want the shoulders to be parallel to the start line, and I want the hands to be under the shoulders. Well, you're pretty much going to take care of path. The other thing I think about, okay, you have path and face to control direction of the golf ball, whether it's on the ground or in the air. Okay, so if the face, path and face, right? Okay, so what controls the path we talked about? What controls the face? What controls the face when a player putts is pressure on the grip. If you put pressure on the top of the grip, what's the face going to do on the forward stroke? What's it doing? Come on, wake up. What's it doing? It's closing, right? Pressure on the bottom of the grip, what's it doing? Opening. So I'm trying to find a grip that allows people to keep pressure on the side of the grip throughout the motion, forward and back, to get rid of face rotation. I don't like face rotation, and there's some players who can do it and do it well, but it takes a lot more practice, and I think for the amateur, it's really hard if you start asking them to rotate the face around the axis of the shaft. So I really want to keep the face quiet, square to the path. I believe the putter swings naturally in a very slight arc. Just for, I show this when I do a presentation sometimes, but Jeff Brunsky, who is the senior engineer at Dunlop Sports, he does all this stuff. I actually asked him, I said, if you have a putter that's at 70 degrees, the line goes 70 degrees, and you have a person that's 6 foot tall, and you have the fulcrum, and you let the putter naturally swing, what's the arc going to be? Because you understand that putters that are straight up and down, if they were allowed, that would swing naturally straight back and straight through, right? The greater the angle, the greater the natural arc. At 70 degrees, 12 inches back and 12 inches forward, on either side of that, it's 1.3 inches. That's the amount of arc. I could go off on a long tangent about swinging in an arc or swinging straight back and straight through, and hopefully I have some time to talk about feels because I think it's really, really important. But at any rate, that gives you a little bit about what I think about as far as what the putter should naturally do. And then this is a big one, and I want to show because this applies to you. This I think a lot of people miss. All right, so come over here where you can see this. So this is Luke Donald. Obviously, I don't know if you guys, I'm sure most of you know, Luke Donald's one of the greatest putters of all time. I want you to look at where his hips are, okay? And if I draw a line down from behind his shoulders, I can't see that cursor, there it is. Do you see how that line is past his knees, right? In other words, when he sets up, his shoulder joint is clear of his knees, okay? All right, so if we look at a lot of great putters, you would see that same, here's Tiger, right? You see his shoulder joint is past his knees, right?
So I need to get my hips back. Is that what you're going to
No.
Okay.
That's the problem. So here's an example of, and if you guys can see this on screen, here's Joe Durant, and if you guys don't know, like they say one of the best ball strikers. I can't move this cursor really effectively here. There it is. There we go. Okay, so Joe was one of the best ball strikers of all time on the tour. I mean, frozen rope. I spent 3 years working with him on his putting and his short game, and I walked a lot of rounds of golf, and it was so boring. I mean, just down the middle, frozen rope. But not a very good, well, a poor putter, to be honest with you. Now, I want you to watch this. All right, so here's Joe. When I first saw him, I went out to Disney, when it was called the Disney, and where's that cursor? I can't see it. Dang it.
Right there. There you go.
Oh, you got it.
Oh.
There. There's got to be a way to change that so for someone that knows how to do IT. But anyway, watch what happens here. So can you guys see on the screen how he's coming up and out and back, right? Why is that happening? So if you look at his hip line is way behind him. It's too far back, right? You see that?
Compared to that guy.
Compared to this. So that's Joe, where I moved his hips forward, okay? And so at that point, he can start to stay in the putt, right? And so I want you to think about this. So the center mass, to me, it's really important. There's rotation. There's some very slight, but the center mass has to be stable still. What I talk about is, all right, if I had a grapefruit in the middle of a person's body, I will call that the center mass, right? I want that grapefruit to stay still. If the grapefruit is physically moving this way, so is the putter, and you're going to have a toe hit. So what I see very quickly, I mean, you tilt nicely, have great posture, but when you set up, you kind of set up like this. And this is a common thing for a lot of good players because in the golf swing, you know, the hips are deeper, but the knees are more forward, right? Why? Because I'm more engaged and I'm going to use the ground. But in the putting stroke, I'm not using ground force. I'm trying to stabilize. So if you think about, like, what's Tiger's favorite drill? I've seen him do this on putting greens multiple times. He would set up, and he would get set, and he would take his left hand off the putter, and he would practice with his trail arm, right? Well, if you think about that, if my hips are back here, my shoulder is stuck, and now I got to move my center mass left, well, that's going to make the putter drag left, and there's going to be the toe hit. So and this is a very small adjustment. But all I'm going to ask you to do is simply, like, I use this all the time. I use GPS as a setup routine. Grip, posture, stance. So let's do this together in a routine. All right, so you're going to set up to that ball. I use the phrase rotate, tuck, and tilt to help amateurs to get in a good position. What's rotation? So when I let my arms hang, my palms don't really face each other, and most people don't, some more than others, some not at all. But enough rotation just to bring the palms to neutral, okay? So we'll call that external rotation, like they're getting ready to throw a ball. So now I like the elbows just to rest gently in front. Like I like connection at the bicep, but I like the elbows to be more in front. You see a lot of amateurs, especially women, that have putters too long and their elbows are back here. Whenever the elbow is behind the player, they got to move the body out of the way of the arm, or they got to use their hands. And either way is not very, it's pretty hard to do. So I like that. Now, let's go ahead and grip the putter. So at this stage, I teach people, I like the putter, the shaft to be in alignment with the forearms. So they can find that easier up here than they can down here. So get up here, and a lot of times I have a mirror where they can see this. Then I ask them to take a step with their right foot only, leave the left back, and tilt till the putter hits the ground, right? Right, so let's do it to a ball, yeah, right there. Now, as you do that, now here's the key. When you take your stance and adjust your left and then your right foot, I want you, and you're going to feel top heavy at first. With a slight amount of knee flex, I want you to be able to tap your heels. Great, great. So that's very slightly different. Like we moved your hips probably 2 inches there.
I feel like I'm...
You feel like you're top heavy, right?
Yeah, and I
Yep.
have to scoop my feet back to not have my eyes over.
Yeah, so that's where we get into kind of fine-tuning the measurement of the putter, which we may do. I mean, this putter's pretty close, but I want you to make a stroke, and if I may, can I hold your sides? Okay, so, all right, so make a putting stroke for me. All right, was that more off the center? I mean, I can't see from where I'm at.
I think, I don't know, felt thin.
That was more off the center, wasn't it? Yeah. Can you feel different when I'm holding your center?
I'm restricted, so obviously I would be moving.
Yeah. So, the way I talk about moving the putter is I like to call it an arms-driven shoulder stroke. And again, I have preferences, but I'm talking more about common players and amateurs than I'm tour players. Stan Utley is a good friend of mine. He likes to load the putter, and I get that. He kind of loads his wrist, and then he releases it, and then he firms up, right? He has a long, short stroke. So that's how he gets energy. I think most amateurs aren't good enough to just use their hands as their primary energy source. So I like people to move more of the putter with their arms, and obviously the arms are connected to the shoulders are going to respond to that. So I don't call it a shoulder stroke, because the minute I say shoulders, I see them move their whole torso. So I like them to sense that I'm just moving my arms back and forth. A lot of times I'll say, imagine there's a rail system under your rib cage, and you're just going to let the elbows kind of run on the rail. So when I go back, I'm going to feel my lead elbow kind of slide across the bottom of my ribs, and on the forward stroke, I'm going to let my right elbow slide across, and I'm going to have minimal shoulder rotation. I don't like a lot of this because I think it pulls the putter offline, right? Yeah. So the reason, here's very simple. The reason for your toe hit was that, to me, you were set up really nicely with your feet probably 1 inch, maybe 2, too close to the golf ball, and then kind of sitting back in your heels, probably like you would address a 5-iron, right, where you're more centered. And again, in the full swing, I can show this to you real quick if you guys can see it. So here's Tiger. Here's Tiger in his putting setup, and then here's Tiger in his swing. You can see his hips are back, but his knees are forward, so there's a counterbalance there, right? So he's like this when he goes to set up for he goes like this to set up for basically hips back, knees forward, right? When he's hitting a 5-iron. So the center mass.
I've basically been putting like this, my same golf setup.
A little bit, right? Right, which you can move dynamically. You can push off the ground for your golf swing, but you don't want to do that in putting, right? Make sense?
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah. Okay, good. All right, so anyway, my point is that we want to just get your hips over your heels, get your weight more on the balls of the feet, and then I'd have you working on really trying to stabilize your center so we didn't have so much of your center mass moving left, which you felt when I went to hold you. Does that make sense to you? Right. Now, again, a professional, fitted, the putter's not bad. Like, I can fit that, and I will. Let's do that. So here's how this fitting system works. And this is how I came up with this. So this was 20 years ago. I'm doing my school, and I would take 10 people on a Saturday in the short game school. We'd do putting in the morning, short game in the afternoon. And so I've got 10 people sitting down. I'm giving a presentation about kind of this, using this. And actually, I didn't have this at first. I've just given a presentation. And so I would see people, and I'm looking at them in their chairs, and as they walk up, I can see their height, and I can see what putter's in their hand, and I already know I'm going to have a hard time helping this person because the putter is not going to let them set up to the ball the way I want them to set up. Think about how most people buy putters. They buy putters off the shelf without any professional help. And I was a part of that. When I had the shop at Conway Farms and I owned it, and Mr. Smith would walk in and say, Todd, I putted bad. I would say, Mr. Smith, just grab 3 or 4 putters, go out to the putting green and find one that helps you, which was crazy. I just made myself unvaluable to him, right? And now if I owned the shop at Conway Farms and Mr. Smith walked in, I would not say that. I would say, you know what, let me help you. And that probably is going to be a putting lesson. And during that, I have a lot of people that call me up and because here's what happens. So say I give someone a putting lesson, and in that process, I figure out that their current putter doesn't fit them. I fit them for a putter, I make a putter for them, and they walk out and then with a fitted putter and a new setup, and they perform better with the people they're playing with. And then I get calls from the people they're playing with. Hey, I need to get a fitted putter. And I explain to them, I didn't just fit the putter. We figured out the putter. He took a lesson, and in that process, I figured out his putter didn't fit him and allow him to set up the way he needed to perform better. So I want you to come take a lesson. It's always instruction first, because it's always about helping the player. It's not about selling a putter, right? That's a result that is sometimes necessary, and sometimes it's not. I'm just honest with people. Now, how I came up with this is that the putter's just a diagonal line, and I literally drew this on a napkin after school. The putter's a diagonal line, and all I had to do was try to figure out how to measure it. Well, 8th grade math. Nowadays it's probably 5th grade math, unless you're, well, we'll say it's 5th grade math. But anyway, straight down and straight over, make a triangle out of it, you can measure it, right? That's as simple as I could do. Now, when you think about it, if someone's eyes are on the inside edge of the golf ball and their hands are under their shoulders and their hips are over their heels, I just want to figure out what connects the dots. And that's what the Tri-Fit tool does. So we'll use that rotate, tuck, and tilt. So come back over here for me. All right, so we're going to go rotate, tuck, step on your right foot, tilt, find your balance point.
Oh, I thought I was doing it to that.
Yeah, keep this away from people. If you end up getting a never compromise system, we'll talk about that, or Mike can talk with you about that at the end of this or during lunch. But keep the tool away from people, because the putter or the tool will influence the setup. Get them where you want them without any influence. So her hands right now are outside of her shoulder line, so I want your hands right under your shoulders. Feel that?
Yeah.
Right? And then now just take your stance where you just feel like you're more on the balls of the feet than you were. Beautiful. I still want those hands kind of right about there, right? Good. Okay, so now I just take the tool. This arm goes up and down. Are we passing those charts around? Yeah, pass those charts. Yeah, okay, good. So this arm goes up and down, right? And I'll just take this in. I put this tool so it's at the wrist crease, the lead hand, right? And so we're going to be at 30.5, so grip that for me.
Feels short.
So let's go a little longer, right? I'm going to go up to there. Good. Just let that,
I just want to lift up my hand.
I know. I want to get those hands right underneath you. And again, what's the other reason why the putter would go left? Because if the hands are outside of the shoulder line, so the two little tendencies I see in your putting stroke is hips are back and hands are out. Mm-hmm. Those two influences are going to cause the putter to go this way, unless you go back underneath it and kind of shove it. Does that make sense? And then you're going to fight natural, right? Yeah. Which is what makes sense for the toe hit. Does that all make sense to you guys? Yeah. Okay, so go ahead and set up again. Right? And then what I'm doing here, do we have I can use this. Where do your eyes intersect that mirror?
10.5.
Okay. And I usually have an alignment rod, and I just kind of hang it and kind of confirm that. So 10.5 is where eyes hit the mirror. And so if you look at this, I want you guys to see this. You can stand up now. No, you can stay right there. You're good. So there's a mirror where eyes intersected, and her eyes hit 10.5. And if you look at this, it's 31. Okay, so, chart, thank you. So like on this chart, and I show the player, I'm like, look, we just measured 31 inches down. Your eyes hit 10.5. Where do you like your eyes in relation to the golf ball? Inside edge, right? So we're going to add a half an inch to that, because if your eyes are at 10.5, we're going to have the center of the ball, the center of the putter, just a half an inch outside of that. Does that make sense? So now we're going to use 31 and 11. Okay. That's what fits you when you're in the setup that we just defined for you. So we go down 31, we go over to 11, and we fit to right to 33, right? Now here's something that's kind of interesting, and I've had this experience a lot of times with when a husband and wife comes to the school and they're actually very close to the same height. Say they're both 5'9", and the woman actually ends up fitting to a longer putter than her husband. And he's like, how can that be? Why do you guys think that is? Women's legs are longer than men a lot of time, right? So they're higher up. Like one of the guys that I was coaching was Steve Jones. I worked with him for a decade, and we were at the Bob Hope. And he's 6'4", and Dan Forsman, who is a good friend of him, is 6'4". They're standing next to each other, and I realized people aren't the same. So Dan Forsman's belt was about 6 inches further from the ground than Steve Jones. So Dan Forsman had long legs, short torso. Steve Jones had long arms, long torso, shorter legs comparatively. If you put them on top of each other, they would have been 6'8" instead of 6'4". Does that make sense?
I have short legs and a long torso.
I don't know. I mean, bottom line is get someone where you want them and then fit them to the putter, right? And so, like your arms may be shorter, right? Than that.
I keep wanting to push my hands up.
Start like this. Yeah, start up like this. Bend your elbows, step, tilt, boom, right? Good. And I'm going to pull this more underneath you because you're like 9.5 there, right? Before?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and now here's a little checkpoint too. Like, take someone, leave them right, put your hand right here where they can't move, drop your right hand off, okay? And do you see how it's in alignment with the grip? Let's say that the tool was out here. Grip with your left hand, drop your right hand off. See the difference? Now our hand's inside. And I always tell people, like, look at when your hands are in the right place in relation to their shoulders, you should be able to swing one hand, hit the other, and clap in straight lines, right? So if I'm like this, I'll go in a straight line. But if I'm sitting back and my hands are out here and I do the same thing, it's going left, toe hit, right? Does that make sense to you? Mm-hmm. So like a good little routine for you, like once you're set up, is 2 things I would tell you to check. Can you lift one heel then the other? Barely. I mean, I'm only saying 60% of your weight should be more favoring the balls of your feet. All right, so can you lift one heel then the other? And if you dropped your right hand off the grip, is in alignment. And so the 2 things, like if I sit back, and you can see when I sit back, where's my hand go? It goes outside of my shoulder line. So, right, well, that would be my toe head. Yeah. Is this all making sense to you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So.
Mine's over there, but that's right.
Yeah. So I would encourage you guys to do this too. Where's her putter? Oh, there it is. Most amateurs have no idea what they're putting with. What do you putt with? I don't know. 34, 35, 33. I mean, those are the 3 lengths. Most of the putters on the shelf, I think, it used to be 80% of putters that were sold on the shelf were 35. What I've found on the fittings that I've done, 35 fits people pretty well at 6'2", 6'3", 34 around 6 foot. And there's always outliers, I understand that. 33 like Luke Donald, you know, he's 5'9", maybe 5'9.5", 33. Jamie Mulligan is here. Kind of confirm, if you will, for us, Jamie. I've heard that Patrick Cantley uses 33. Is that true? Where's Jamie Mulligan? Is he here? We don't know. All right. So, but I've heard that.
Last night.
Oh, okay.
Get him back.
Pardon me.
He took him out last night.
Oh, they did. Okay. But anyway, my point is that Patrick Cantley sets up with his arms a little lower, not quite as high, and I think that's fine. I don't like the elbow stuck. And if there's a good player and they have their arms a little lower, that doesn't matter to me. But anyway, so my point to you is measure someone's putter. Don't take for granted what they have. Oh, this is a 33, okay? So we're just confirming, and you'll have this. You'll have sometimes where someone sets up and you got to do a little bit of adjusting, but their putter fits them. Just be honest. Say, look, your putter fits you. It's not a problem. But if you showed up with your husband's 35-inch putter, it would be a big problem, right?
I think I was fit properly, and then I just...
Yeah.
Bad habits kept.
Yeah. So
right.
this is great because it's a confirmation of a player that has a putter that fits them, but we just needed to work a little bit on the fundamentals of her setup to help and get her practicing the correct way to get that putter not to swing left, causing the toe hit. So you're thinking, aren't you?
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think I want to go practice now.
Do you? Good.
I'm not practicing.
All right. So that's cool. All right. So I think we did. Any questions?
It seemed like it was going to be a little too flat, having.
Yeah, so let's talk about lie angle. I'm glad you said that. Let's talk about lie angle. So there's 3 things that influence lie angle. Length of the putter influences lie angle. Like if you take someone and you give them, like this is a 35-inch putter. So if she go ahead and set up with that.
And it needed to be more upright as
well. Yeah, so like if you set up with that, the toe's going to sit up in there. Most people would look at that and go, oh, your alignment's bad and the putter, the toe's sit up. We need to change the lie angle. But here's the thing. When you change the length, like if she moves her hands down here, that's going to change the lie angle. So in other words, if someone set up, can I borrow that putter? So if I say I set up with this putter, and I had to let my hands go right where I want them to go, okay? Well, if I change the length, that affects the lie angle. That's number 1. So you've got to first, before you change line, you got to determine length. Number 2 is hand position. So if you have Steve Stricker, he's going to grip the club much more through his lifeline. If you had Tiger Woods, he's going to grip it kind of at the low part of his palm. That's 4 degrees, right? So that can change lie angle. And then the third thing is the hip position. So if my hips go back, that's going to affect lie angle. So when we moved your hips forward, right, that putter sat a little more upright. And so we might have to make adjustment. My point is, don't change lie angle until you've done everything else. That's the final piece of the fitting puzzle. And very often, like, I have a Mitchell machine at my school, and we would go through between 150 and 200 putters a summer through my school, and I probably would change a dozen lie angles. I never changed loft, by the way. When you change loft, when I see that, when you start changing loft, you're bending the hosel, you're actually changing the face attitude. The only way to really change the loft properly and keep the face square to the shaft is to mill it off the bottom edge of the putter. So if you start bending the hosel, if you're adding loft, you're closing the face. If you're decreasing loft, you're opening the face to the shaft. So I'm very
You want my hands to sit lower.
Yeah, so let's talk about this. So
flat.
radial, if you're going to hit in, this is why I explain to amateurs, if I was going to hit a nail with a hammer, right, I would go into radial, right? And then as I was hitting the nail, as I was releasing it, I'm at neutral, and then by the time I hit it, I'm at ulnar, okay? So you can make slight adjustments. So you look at Tiger, he's more in a little more radial, and Steve Jones would be in a little more ulnar, and I prefer more neutral. I don't like tension in my hands. But again, that's another little ingredient you can use. So, you know, your tendency with the claw is to get a little bit of ulnar. Does that make sense? And so the combination of moving her hips forward and what she seems to like is a little more ulnar is probably, if you set that putter at 72 versus 70, it's 70, that's Scotty's lie angle, right?
It's kind of funny that now that you're getting my hands in the right place, I want to grip it normal again.
Do you?
Because this, like you're saying, is easier for me to hit my hands like that.
Interesting, right?
And if you push my hands back, I don't feel like I can hold on to it.
And that's where,
so then I want to grip it normal again.
That's where, like, the lesson would be over, and I would say, you know what, good player, I want you to go practice, and I want you to come back with feedback, and we might make that, we might change your grip, right? I would be totally open to her. I'm looking for comfort in what works, right? And if I can get the ball rolling the way I want it to roll, and we change her grip to do it, you know, she's going to figure that out. I'm going to figure that with her, and in time, we're going to figure out what's exactly right for her, and then create a pre-shot routine and develop the mental skills around that to support it. Does that make sense to you? Yeah. So, you good?
Yeah, this was good. Thanks.
Good. My pleasure. Thanks for coming. Give her a big hand, right? All right. So let's do.
Okay, so we have a 15 handicapper, the people that we normally kind of see every single day.
Yeah.
John Thomas. So full disclosure, John Thomas is my partner at my LOR lab. He's PT. His background as a physical therapist, but he's also TPI certified and our fitness coach at our my indoor facility. He's not a good putter, and he heard that you can get a free putter today. So, John.
Maybe. If your putter fits you, I'm sorry, you're going to be out of luck. But if it happens to not fit you, you're going to get your putter doesn't fit you. Anyway, so come out over here, John. So this is going to be great because this is what you're going to have. If you do a lot of putting schools, you're going to get exactly this. People that have no idea. How do people find their setup? They adapt to the putter they buy off the shelf. And most people don't even have an idea. You know, here's back to Chip Beck. When I started with Chip, I started with him in putting, and he came down to the putting green, he had an armful of putters. And they were from 33 to 35. And I said, well, what'd you win with? And he's like, well, I won with this. We figured out what the length that was right for him. But a lot of people don't know, and that's a top player. He was a top 10 player at the time. You take the average amateur, they have no idea. They just buy putters off the shelf. And you think about it, they go into a store or wherever, or a putting green and hit some putts, and the one that makes the most putts they buy. And then 6 months go by, and they haven't changed the reason why they're a bad putter, and they realize, I missed enough putts with this putter, so it must be the putter. I need another putter. instead of seeking out you, the professional, to help them get set up better. So there's just a huge opportunity for you to be a hero to these people, because if you're the person that gets between them and that putter shelf, and you fit them for a putter and they improve, you became very valuable in their eyes instead of what I used to, which is walk away from that opportunity. Okay, so John, what I'm going to do, first of all, you're about, how tall are you?
5'8".
Yeah. So, ask the player, how tall are they? Don't guess. So John just said he's 5'8", okay? What length putter do you use?
I don't know.
That's the most common answer you get. I have no idea. So he has no idea what's right. So measure what he has. You have to do that because people don't know. And, I mean, I can eyeball this and tell you it's a 35, which it is. Does anybody know why 35-inch putters are the most common putter on the shelf?
Fits in the bag.
Exactly. It fits the golf bag. The golf bags are 34.5 inches tall. So for a long time, 35 was the standard, which is absolutely ludicrous, right? It's not the standard on tour, but it's the standard off the shelf. And now there's 35s and there's 34s. So think about how you buy your putters. Give me a bunch of 35s and give me some 34s and maybe a couple 33s. You put them on the shelf and then people grab them and they form their setup around a putter. So I already know what I'm going to get into here. So let's hit some putts. This is going to be fun. So I want you to do what you do, okay? Just be normal. Okay, now turn this way toward these guys and hit a couple putts off the green that way. So you're going to turn, yeah, you're going to go right down there. I want you guys to see his posture. What's our timing again? Till 10. Okay. Okay, so what do you guys see right now from what we've talked about today? Someone say something.
Balance wasn't on his balls.
Wasn't on his balls. What about his posture? Where were his eyes? Way inside. Why were his eyes inside? Because why? Yes. But he was too upright, right? Why was, so again, remember the phrase, ask why till you can ask why no more. The more you can figure out the beginning of a problem and find the source, the less you're going to have to teach someone mechanically. So the whole thing is, it's simple to me. I mean, I look at him right away and I'm like, okay, he's set up tall. Why? Because the putter's 35 inches, so he learned to do this. So now his hands are outside of his shoulders. Now he's back a little bit on his heels, right? So the major thing I have to do is get him tipped over to get his hands room to get underneath his shoulders. He's going to feel more weight on the balls of his feet, but he's going to feel really close to the ball. You know, it's really interesting when you have someone that's, their eyes are used to being whatever measurement from the ground, and then you tip him over, he's going to feel like this, right? So let's talk about feel and real. When you change someone from where they're at to where you want them to be, and they say, that's not comfortable, you know, what's your answer to that? My answer is this. So say my son, back when he was in grade school in the first grade, was allowed to have his feet up on the desk, right, and slump forward the whole year. And he went to the second grade, and the teacher said, Owen, put your feet on the ground and sit up straight. And he's like, well, that's not comfortable. I'd be like, I hope she did her job and told him to sit up straight and put his feet on the ground. My job isn't to get someone comfortable. My job is to get them in the right place and for them to become comfortable doing the right thing over time, right? So he's going to get a little uncomfortable because this is going to be a big change. So we're going to do this pretty quick, and you are going to get a putter because God knows you need one. And by the way, this is a great putter. The spiders are great putters. Someone asked me, what about Lab? Is Lab a great putter? They're great putters. But a putter is never going to fix a stroke. I don't care how good the putter is if the player is not in the right setup to it, right? It's got to be fitted to be correct, right? So what I want you to do, John, is go like this. You're going to rotate. Actually, you can step right over here for me. And I'm going to have you kind of start here so these guys see, and then I'm going to have you pivot that way. Okay, so we're going to start here. We're going to rotate, tuck, elbows, just, and do this. Like, show people, like right now his arms are wider than his rib cage. That's one thing you can see. When someone's elbows are wider than the rib cage, he's trapped. If they're narrower than the rib cage, he's too in front, right? So I'm trying to get that sweet spot, and I'll just bring him here. I'll put him right where I want him, and then rotate that in. And then sometimes there's tension in the shoulders. I show people all the time, you know, let's get the tension out of your upper body, like pull your shoulders back down and relax. Don't let them come forward. Don't let them get pulled back, but just get in a really relaxed position. So there's no tension here. So that's all great. Now, and I point this out. This is your hip joint. I want you to bend from your hip joint. So we're going to step forward together on one foot. It's a lot easier to bend forward on one foot than two, right? So I'm going to bend until the hands come right under and just put them in position. So I like where he's at here in his tilt. Now I'm going to let his arms swing down. Good. And get his elbows kind of where I want them. Great. Now adjust your left foot and your right foot and just try to figure out where you feel really balanced. Great. All right, so you guys can see that. So just, if you can, very slowly, without changing your angles, kind of rotate like this for me, just so these guys can see where he's at. But you guys can see now I've got him tilted, right? You know, I do this in the schools all the time with short game and putting. Really, it's a swing too. I always tell people it's a lot easier to play golf under your body than around your body. Now, what I mean by that, let's say I have a ball in my trail arm and I stand up straight. Well, it's going to swing more here. If I let go of it early, it's going to be in right field. And if I let go of it late, it's going to be in left field. And so, obviously, my deviation is huge there. Not good enough to be a good player. But if I get into a tilt from my hip joint, and I let that hand get right underneath my shoulders, well, if my timing's a little bit off, it's okay. I'm going to be okay. So if I'm hitting a chip shot or a drive or a putt, I feel like you're going to do a lot better when you get your hands more underneath your shoulders at impact than if you're playing golf with your hands outside of your shoulders from a taller posture, right? So turn this way for me. Good. Stay right there. Okay, now this is common. Someone that doesn't tilt from the hips will typically slump from the shoulders because they still need to see the ball. So a lot of times if you're getting someone to change their bending point from their hips, you probably need to get them to be in a little better posture, right? That's better. And you know about that. You're a trainer. So now we're going to get the arms, and this happens a lot. They let their arms hang. They straighten out. So put them where you want them. Good. Get those hands underneath. Good. So I'm starting to like this. He's a little bit bent over there. I'm kind of getting right about there. Great. Can you guys see what we're doing here as far as the posture goes? Now, I can measure it. I'm pretty happy with it. And again, I just take this tool, and I move this up and down until it's right at the left wrist crease. Slide this in. I'm going to go a little lower, 31. This chart, are we handing those charts around?
Yeah.
This chart's pretty cool because the gray is kind of the gray column is the A squared. The white column here at 10 inches is kind of an average. A lot of people will sit back on their heels and their eyes will be at like 8. So I'm always trying to get people at least to the 10, maybe 9.5. This is pretty good though. And if you look at this black column, this first column, it gives you a reference. People under 5'2", they're going to be probably on a vertical line. That's measuring this line right here. If you're looking at the chart, they're going to be somewhere around 28, 28.5 as far as vertical goes, right? And so there's a guideline there. So this chart's really user-friendly. We've worked hard to do it that way. So you can see how his hands are wanting to get outside of his shoulder line. So I'm just going to move the tool more underneath him. Right? Good. Good. Okay, now
how much of the butt of the club do you want? I mean, where do you like to see them hold on to? With all
you know, this is
I
what's...
know grips are going to come into play here
Yeah.
in a little bit. But
basically, if it's someone that's not putted and I can really control that, I like the grip cap to be just past the left wrist crease of the palm. Now, if it's a really good player and they're used to putting their pinky, you're probably not going to change that. So you got to take that into account with a good player. It's like where they grip it, and if they're a better player, I'm going to give them more latitude than if they're an amateur player, right? So it depends, right? So when you get set up, this is good. When you get set up, where do your eyes intersect that mirror?
9.
Okay, so, and one thing, I don't know if we're complete, like I do this in my studio where it's completely flat. That is important because you got angles, right? So I think this is a little bit, he's on a little bit of a downhill, so I'm going to pull him a little bit here. Did you just get to round 10?
Yeah.
Yeah.
10.5 or yeah, 10.
Back your feet up a little bit. That's good.
Okay, there's 10, yeah.
Yeah. And so he slid a little bit down on the grip, so I'm just going to adjust this. All right. Your eyes are still at 10 right now? 10.5, 10?
Yeah, like 9.5.
Okay, so we'll say
Oh, there we go. Yeah.
Around 10. And I like that. I like 10. I'm kind of fluctuating a little, or letting him fluctuate and find that spot. But I like 10 because that gets him a little more in the balls of his feet. So here's what we just measured. So here, this is 30 and a half. Okay?
Wow.
And people do that. They go, wow, 30 and a half? That's not the length of the putter. That's the A squared, right? And so we go down 30 and a half. His eyes were at 10. And depending on what you want to do, this is subjective. Like if you want to go, well, like I could go down 30 and a half. I can go over to 10. He fits at 32, which is what length I fit to. I'm 30 and 11. But that would have his eyes right on the center of the golf ball. So I can go down to 30 and a half, and I could easily go to 11. He'd be at 32 and a half, which is where I'm comfortable fitting him. Like I've done this enough where I'm like, I know the spot. 32 and a half is going to let him set up in a really good spot. So now if we take this putter, where's that 32 and a half that I had? Let me measure this real quick. I just want to verify that's. Okay, so this is right at 33. So I want you to grip this putter. I want you to be exact. Okay, see those lines? Mm-hmm. I want you to put the crease of your wrist right on those lines, and I want you to go like this. I want you to step forward. And the cool thing about a putter that fits you, it helps you to set up properly. So all he has to do is put his elbows where I put them originally and tilt till the putter hits the ground and find balance, and he's good. Whereas, think about it, if we take this putter and he did that same thing, he can't tilt forward, which is why his whole setup was mucked up, right? So now I want you to set up with this. We're going to walk into that ball. We're going to roll a couple putts, but let's do it together. Let's do it in tandem. So set up here, okay? All right. There's some grip work I would do here if I had more time. But I'm going to leave this alone for today's purposes. Now, I want you to, that's good. Putter's an extension of your shaft. At the end of this, we have a little more time. And you guys, maybe if at lunch I can change his grip a little bit, but you'd have to see what I'm going to do here, what I would do here. But anyway, step forward and put this putter right behind the ball. And you'll have to, he's finding it. It's pretty good, right? That's great, actually. Good. All right, and I do this all the time. With women, you have to ask permission. But with guys, you can just do it. So I go ahead and swing. Great. So that's an idea of you feeling like the putter's moving underneath you, okay? Now, what often happens is John says, well, can I just cut down on my putter? Can I just cut my putter down, or can I grip down on it? So you've got to have the conversation about swing weight. And this is what I show people. So John, if you put a club, you ever heard the term swing weight?
No.
All swing weight is, it's really important, and it's really important in putting because you feel the swing weight is your sense and your feel of where the putter head is in time as it moves back and forth, right? So when you put a club on a swing weight scale and you cut this end down, you make your putter shorter, you're moving the weight closer to the fulcrum, now it's lighter, okay? So if you're going to balance a putter, you have to, if you're making it shorter, you should make it heavier. If you're making it longer for someone, it should be lighter than if it was shorter, right? So if we just cut down your putter, which is 35, you lose actually swing weights per inch. Not to be too technical, this is more for you guys. That's 12 grams of weight per inch. 2 grams of weight equal 1 swing weight, okay? So by cutting someone's putter down, he would have a putter now that's too light. He would lose feel, and typically when a putter is too light, the person gets too quick in transition, right? It's not a smooth enough transition. So I think swing weight is just as important as length when you get into distance control, because you remember the legs of teaching putting. I want to teach someone to roll it straight, and then I want to work on their speed control skills, which is going to get it, we don't have enough time to get into it, but that's talking a lot about tempo and transition. And bottom line is, you know, if you look at the chart, and if you guys have any of the charts, this is pretty user-friendly too. So here's the weight kit. So when I sat down, this was a pretty cool experience for me. When I sat down with the people, like I did this, I had my own little putter company, Couture Golf. When I sat down with Dunlop Sports, who is Strixon, Zexio, Cleveland, they own the Never Compromise line. They wanted to bring it back down and release it. And I'm like, you know, we don't need another putter on the shelf. We need a putter fitting system. So they sat down and said, what would you do to help professionals help their players? This is exactly what I do. You got to have putters that are raw. So the way the putters come is they're not cut. so you can cut them exactly to the length, which we're going to do. You got to have weight ports, and then you got to make weights available. And so if you look at the chart leads you to that. And so this is a suggested weight. So if I'm building a putter for 32 and a half, I'm going to use the heaviest weights, 25 grams. But if you follow the chart, we go all the way to lightest of 5, which helps us get to a 37-inch putter. But that's pretty cool, right? Yeah. So then we just got to pick a model. And I'm going a little faster than I would go in a lesson. But like, do you have a preference as far as model goes? I mean, you're using a mallet, a spider. You want to kind of keep in that family?
I don't have a preference.
Okay, so my preference for people, if they don't have a preference, I'd rather have someone in mallets. I just think they're a little more stabler, they're easier. There's more tour players using mallets, so it's like, what I'm trying to do when I help someone choose a putter is I'm trying to make sure they're confident in what their choice. One time I was giving a seminar in Colorado actually, and there was someone there who was fitting and kind of talked about linear, nonlinear, and he said this player is a nonlinear, he should never have a line in his putter. And the player he was kind of explaining said, I want a line in my putter. And this teacher said, you shouldn't have a line in your putter. And so he talked him into buying a putter without a line on it. And he called him, whatever, a week, 2 weeks later and said, I really need a putter with a line on it. He said, I can't do that for you. The opposite. I think people's belief system, whether it's placebo or not, is really important. And if someone doesn't like the way it looks, I don't care how good their setup is. If they're not confident in what they're looking at, they're not going to putt well. You've got to help them be confident in their choice. So if you look at these putters, here's the different models. So we have this is the common Fang style, right? Mm-hmm. And then the other mallet, I think that's important, is what's in your hand, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. And there's two different finishes. There's blades, right? Mm-hmm. Which I'm going to kind of steer you away from. I just think that I want to keep you in the family where you're used to, mm-hmm. right? So of these two, mm-hmm. which one, does one have a better appeal to you than the other? And this can come in black and silver and black, and this can come in all silver, the three, okay? So that like, I can get more into the weeds and more detailed about that, and I do when I'm working with someone, but for these purposes, we're going to make you a 3. Cool. Okay? So let's make them a 3. What color oh, yeah, so we have 2 finishes. Now, this is my preference. I like the contrast finish because here's something else that I notice. A lot of players don't frame the ball really properly. A lot of amateurs, for some reason, they'll pull the hosel away and they'll put the face or the putter more on the toe. And the contrast finish, the silver is exactly the same width as a golf ball. And I simply find, without telling people, they center the putter better because it doesn't look right when you're, does that make sense to you? Yeah. So do you have a preference, even though I just said that?
I like that.
You like
that?
Sounds good. Now you like that, right? All right, so we're going to do number 3, 25. We're going to cut the shaft just a hair under. And this is kind of cool, this sticker, instead of measuring, we send these, they're all at 37 inches, but and you come over and look at these, or during lunch you can see it, there's stickers on them where you can just make the mark, write it where he wants to cut it, pull this up a little bit, and then he'll cut it, he'll make it. And
so we're in 32 and a half?
Yep. And so as he's doing that, I'll tell you a little bit about, because we have till 10 o'clock, right? Good. So, a little bit about how this relationship happened with myself and Never Compromise is, I went through 2 shoulder surgeries, and then I messed up I was in a sling in my hand clawed, so I had to have a surgery in my hand to open up my ulnar nerve and blah, blah, blah. So whatever, that took 7 years of a lot of rehab and stuff to use my arm again. And then I was given a lesson, or not a lesson, a school. I was given a short game school at Royal Ponciana in Naples for Jim Tereskis, which I'd go down there a lot and do schools for him and some other clubs. But anyway, he said, how are you doing with your golf? And I said, I just don't have enough strength to hang onto the golf club and swing it at any sort of speed and compress the ball anymore. So I'm not playing. And I can do short game and putting, but really can't play. And he said, have you ever tried Zexio? I said, I didn't even know what Zexio was. He goes, well, it's spelled XXIO, but it's pronounced Zexio. And so we went out to the range, and right after that, right after I was still healing from the surgery, I just tried the prime, and I could at least hang on to it, and I could hit it. And I'm like, well, this is kind of cool. And so I ended up, he hooked me up with Chuck Theory, who's the VP, and Chuck sent me a set of the forged Zexio clubs, and I'm like, I could play. Not like I used to play, but at least I could play. And I was really thankful for that, because I frankly didn't think I was going to get to play golf again. So I called Chuck up and I said, I really appreciate it. It's really good that you did this. Please come be my guest at the school. And so he's in Chicago, so he came to be my guest, and he saw, I had 10 people in the school. He was one of them. 8 people walked away with a custom fit putter, and what really intrigued him is they didn't come to get a putter, and they didn't think they were going to get a putter. It was just teaching, and so at the end of it, he called me up, he goes, I've never seen 8 people buy putters, and we made, just like that, we had a table set up. I have a guy who was making putters, so I would fit them, and write down their stuff, and we make them putter, and they're walking away with a putter in hand. And in a lesson, by the way, a lot of times when I teach in 30-minute increments, I ask people when they take a putter lesson to take a full hour. And I give them the choice. I'm like, look, I can make you a putter during this hour, and you can walk away with it, or I can make it later, and you can come back and get it. 9 times out of 10, they'll say, I want it right away, because they love being able to right away. So that's kind of a cool thing, the way this is set up. This whole thing is set up so that you can be a hero to people. Like, get them into a putter, get them into a setup that's going to give them better mechanics so that they can start really working on their routine and then develop their skills. Don't think that you're going to give one putting lesson and make someone a great putter. But you got to start with a good setup and a good putter and then continue to work on developing their skills. And there's a lot you could do. I could go on for the rest of the day and talk about the different things that I do in putting instruction and get really deep.
With the next step as they're getting to here, what about the grip sizes? You see all the big
Yeah,
grips right
you
now.
know what? I went too fast. All right, so here's another thing. So we talked about the swing weight scale, right? So the swing weight scale, the fulcrum is 14 inches past the grip, or 14 inches past the end. So the grip's on this side of the fulcrum. Well, sometimes these oversized grips, they're really heavy. You got to pay attention to the gram weight of the grip, because if you put a bunch of mass on this side, that's going to make this side lighter. So when I sat down when we had designed this original system, I said, we need to have there's 3 different size grips. There's a large, there's a jumbo, there's a medium, and then there's a small. And you can see the small is actually a rubber compound because they're all right around 72 grams, within 2 grams of 72. Which means that someone can choose the grip that they're comfortable with. And as far as grip goes, it's interesting, like when you have more of the smaller grip, like the Scotty Cameron grips, I think that players that use their hands a little more, I think that's fine. But I think a lot of amateurs, I'm yielding more to a medium to a larger grip. Like I like the Super Stroke 2.0 Tour. That's what I'm comfortable with. But again, the gram weight on that is 54 or 56 grams, so it doesn't throw off the swing weight. So I'm careful with that. So bottom line, John, if you looked at these grips, and I'm careful about getting people into big grips if they don't need them, because I think big grips can take away feel. So I'm trying to find the sweet spot, but those are the 3 different sizes, right? So put your hands on that, right? This is the smaller grip, right? And again, the grip is not the most important thing. It can be changed. The weights can be changed. Like say that I put 25 gram weights in John's putter, and he goes out and putts with it. He comes back to me and says, hey, can we put 20s in it? I can put 20s in it, through the kit. And he can try that, and we can find out together what's best for him, right? But the medium, right? Yeah, I was kind of thinking medium, so we're going to use the medium-sized grip. But again, all 3 grips are 72 grams, so it doesn't really change the swing weight in the scale of the putter, right?
So the other question that I know people have, or I have, is the longer is maybe it's a mic question as far as you folks going to have this thing in a longer shaft for people that number one, I have the people that we deal with at our place have back issues.
Yep.
They can't get themselves over as such. How do you deal with that?
So let's talk, well, there's 2 questions there. Like, okay, long putting. Belly putting is still conventional putting connected to the belly. I actually used to have an extension on this tool before USGA took away anchored putting, where you could get the person in the right setup and then extend and then figure out exactly, because obviously if someone has a bigger belly and someone has a flatter belly, there's going to be a different length belly putter. It needs to be measured. But if someone's Bernhard longer, let's say even Bryson DeChambeau, that putter is going to be more upright, so their stroke is going to be straighter. And so, when I sat down with these guys, they're going to do different things as we develop this, but at first, like, let's just hit the mass, right? Let's get people in a good position, because a lot of people that go to those techniques, they've never been taught a decent, fundamentally sound technique. Make sure you do that again. Make sure, and this is really common, so he got slumped and he got straight with his arms, right? So remember to start up here, give me some fold on your elbows, okay? Keep that bend. And a lot of times I'll do this when someone tilts. I'll put my finger right here because a lot of times when people tilt, they just drop, right? I want to keep the elbows flexed, right? And now with the elbows flexed, I'm gonna drop the hands underneath. Let's go a little wider, split your elbows apart. There we go. And just help people find that spot. It's gonna take some time. It's just like a lesson. Don't think people are gonna take one putting lesson and get substantially better. And tell them that, I'm gonna cut you this putter. I want you to work with this. I want you to take a follow-up putting lesson, and then I'm gonna work on the green, start doing some green reading, some aiming skills and things like that. But first I'm gonna get the fundamentals correct. Right, good. And again, this will all get easier when he gets a putter that's the right length, right? Because then the putter hits the ground, and that's going to help him continue to get to the right place. All right, so let's start up here, okay? Okay, good. Pull his elbows up, nice. Now, just take a step with your right foot, tilt, right? Putter's on the ground. Find your balance point. We want to favor the balls of the feet. Good. Like you guys can see that's a lot better than when we started, right? So his chance of getting any better with this putter, not very good, right? His chance of becoming a better putter with this putter is very good. So always start up here. Always step with your right foot, lead into the golf ball, drop, and then adjust left, right. Good. I'm going to ask you to soften your hands slightly. Good. Get a little closer to the ball. And you'll do this. You'll have to kind of move people around till he learns, right? Good. That's great. Now go. Just try to keep your body still. Let the putter work, right? Pretty good. Much better putting stroke, right? Could you guys see how he didn't move so much? Because he was able to kind of move the putter underneath him. He didn't have to move to get out of the way of his arms. So that's kind of the system. Now how this worked, again with Chuck to finish that story, is that after Chuck saw how I fit putters, and he said, I can't believe that 8 people bought putters, because that's what he saw. He's a sales guy. And I said, well, the reason why they bought putters is not because I was trying to sell putters. It's because they knew I was trying to help them be a better putter. And that's where it goes back to instruction before fitting, or fitting should be a part of instruction. And so that's when I met with Mike Powell, who's the CEO, and then we sat down and we said, okay, I know there's fitting systems out there right now. A lot are alignment based. I'm not opposed to that, but I've got to see someone that sets up properly with a proper length putter and has good mechanics. Because alignment is last in the line for me, it's not first. That's just how I approach it. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong, it's just the way I approach it. I want to get the ball rolling straight mechanically, and then I'm going to kind of go after alignment. I think alignment and aim has to be practiced. I've just been around too many tour players, and at one point they're lined up with the same putter really well and rolling it really well, and then they don't practice their alignment, and then they're not lining up well, right? And then they're reacting in their stroke. But I think, when you talk, like one book I read, Lanny Basham, and I can't remember the title, some of you may have read it, but he's a sharpshooter and did a lot of alignment skill stuff, and he's like, alignment has to be practiced. I totally believe in that. So when I see the best players, they're working at alignment. To me is a skill that has to be practiced. To say that someone, well, with this putter you line up better, kind of says you don't need to practice your alignment. And I think I can learn to line up any putter if the ball's rolling straight off the face and I just practice that skill. That's kind of a personal opinion, but that's the way I go with that. So questions for you?
No, I think, like you said, just going through that.
Grip it exactly. No, yeah, you don't have to grip down on the putter. This putter's cut to you, right? So let's look at this. Okay, see where your palm is? I want the left wrist creased to be right there. And I want you to be precise about that every time you grip it. Okay?
Yeah.
Good. Okay, step and tilt. Back and forth. It's good. It's great. Let the putter swing. Good. You can feel. Can you feel the head?
Yeah.
Yeah. What would happen if he gripped down on this putter? It would be substantially lighter. He would not have the same feel of it, right? And we've got another minute, so let me talk about this a little bit. 10 minutes? Oh, good. Speed control. All right, so speed control, the way I talk about speed control is gravity, I think, has the greatest influence in speed. In other words, if you take a pendulum and you take the weight of a putter and you let it swing back, well, the further it swings, the higher it swings. Well, the higher it swings, the faster it returns. So a lot of amateurs, like I would do this drill, we'd set up this station when we do the putting schools of what I call a 440. And it's where someone would go hit a 4-foot putt and then move over and hit a 40-foot putt. And I would videotape that on my phone and I would show them. most amateurs have very close to the same backstroke no matter what putt they're hitting. So if they have a 10-inch backstroke and they have a short 4-foot fast putt, what do you think the subconscious is going to tell that player to do? Decel, right? And then he takes it back 10 inches and he's got a 40-foot putt. What do you think the subconscious is going to tell the player to do? Accelerate, right? And so, a lot of times you get these strokes that kind of look like they're long on a short putt and they're kind of decelerating and then, or dropping back, like when Parker was talking about getting rid of ball speed, it's the same in putting. If I've got too much energy going forward, I'm going to have to get rid of it before I hit the ball or the ball's going to go too far. If I don't have enough, I got to now add to it, right? But if I have the right length backstroke for the right distance putt, I don't have to do that. I can just let the putter swing. So I think it's really important that people can feel the head of the putter as it swings back and forth so they can start to develop what I call a different length backstroke. What I've seen with tour players is that they have very balanced stroke, and I'm a little more on the side of where I like to see a little longer to shorter. And the way I think about it logistically is that when a putter swings back and it's coming down, it's accelerating, well, when it hits the golf ball, that's going to absorb some of the energy of that natural pendulum. So it's not going to follow through as far as it's going to go back unless they're shoving it, right? So I like putting strokes that are at least balanced and prefer kind of, let's say, a 60-40 versus when I see most amateurs, most amateurs, when they're hitting long putts, if I'm going all the way there, they have a short backstroke, right? And they have a long follow through and they're just, the whole body's moving, and so you might get lucky. Watch, that'll freaking go in.
Hey, Todd, we got a question.
Yes.
Hey, Todd, right here. Right here.
Sorry. Thank you, Randy.
This is great. I love it. I'm looking at this setup. I see the lines from down the line.
Yeah.
I'm curious how much you pay attention to the face-on view as well, and curious what lines you would draw on the face-on view.
Great question. Usually I'm doing a presentation, I'm pulling up face-on too. So we didn't even talk about ball position, right? So this is the way I think about ball position. You'll hear people say the putter, and I agree, the putter should be swinging up. And basically most people believe that 2 degrees. So this is what I tell amateurs. I'm like, look, we want to make solid contact. Solid contact is when the center of the putter, the middle of the putter hits the center of the golf ball. Well, at address, the center of the putter is lower than the center of the golf ball. It needs about 2 to 3 rise angle for those 2 points to hit. So very simply, if I think about the pendulum, right, the pendulum really is represented, the fulcrum would be the sternum. And so the putter at its lowest point, if I don't move my center, it's gonna bottom out at my sternum. And so I want the ball, should I have it on a different presentation? I want the ball to be just forward of the player's sternum, right? Round, give or take. Now, when I do an indoor presentation, I've got a video or a picture of Tiger, Luke, and Schauffele. And Tiger has the narrowest stance, Luke, medium, Schauffele, wider. And what's interesting is it looks like Tiger's playing in the front of his stance, and Luke's kind of playing it a little bit closer to his left foot, and then Schauffele looks like he's playing in the middle. And if you draw a lineup from the golf ball, they're all playing at the same spot. The ball is right here. It's just left of the center point. But if you have a player that has a wider stance, that center point, it's going to look like, visually, if you're looking at their feet, it looks like it's in the middle of their feet. So, I think stance width is a preference. There's good players on tour that have wider stances, obviously Schauffele, and then Tiger was more like this. So I think that you have to work with a player to kind of find what's best and comfortable for them in that situation. Most amateurs out, and so bottom line is, when I look at the front, I'm really looking at ball position. If I'm looking in motion, I'm looking at the chest and the head. I do think it's a lot easier to putt well if you keep your head still. There are players on tour that are able to rotate their head and not move their center. Most amateurs move their center to look at the putt. So I'm a big believer in just helping amateurs keep their head still. Sometimes I'll tell people that imagine that, if you're down in Chicago and you see the horse-drawn carriages, the horses have blinders, so they don't have a peripheral vision. So when you putt, I think you'll be a lot better. I'll put my hands right here, and I'll just tell someone to stay between my hands and not kind of travel and watch that golf ball. So that's something that I'm looking at, those different things from the face-on view when I'm showing.
When I was on tour, I used Bullseye.
Yep.
And I could line it up really well.
Yeah.
And I still go back to it.
Yeah.
I use center shafted putters. There are hardly any center shafted putters.
Yeah.
And can you tell me why they're not?
No, manufacturers could probably do it. You know, manufacturers make what sells on tour, because what sells on the tour, what tour players use is what sell on the shelf. Right now, I'm wanting us to add a center shafted putter. I think hopefully we're going to, but I think that as far as offset goes, you know, you have a plumber neck, right, which looks like an answer, and then this is slant neck, which is about a half shaft of offset. Center shaft would be onset, okay, and then even some putters are made with a shaft back here, right? So ultimately, I think that what you learn to putt with is always going to, especially if you become a good putter with a certain offset. You know, like I grew up with a Zing 2, was a slant neck. So if you give me a plumber's neck, it doesn't look right to my eye. I think I could learn to putt with it with a lot of practice, but I learned with a slant neck, so that's what makes me comfortable. So my point to you is, it's like Steve Jones. He won the U.S. Open. He won 8 times with a bullseye, with very little offset, just a little bit of offset on his bullseye, and that's what he still goes back to that putter because he was great with it, right? And so when he putts bad with anything else, he's always trying different stuff, but he goes back to that bullseye a lot. So I think that you should try to stay in that category because that's what you have the most confidence in.
What is your stance on forward press?
So that's a great question. So forward press, let me borrow that putter because it's closer to what I putt with. Your putter, I don't know what you're going to do with your putter. Do you have either give it to a short friend that you don't like or a tall friend that you do like? So as far as forward press, you know, I'm still trying to make sure it impact, and, you know, most dynamically, I think most players should be around 2 degrees of impact with a 2-degree rise angle. Okay, so if I get a player that comes to me and they got a big forward press, they're going to have to get rid of it, right? They're going to back up this way to get rid of it, or the putter, or they're going to take a divot, okay? And if, it's interesting, like if you look at Phil Mickelson when he was right out of college, he had a big forward press, but he would go backward and he would neutral out. Now it takes a lot of practice and skill to do that, but as he's gone, he's gotten rid of it, right? So here's what I say to someone if they're a good player and they like forward press, because I think it's fine, but I get good players to start with the grip a little bit back. So when they forward press, they end up in a good spot. But if they start forward, they got to back up. That's kind of how I handle forward press.
Could you move ball position, or would you move ball position at all? Like,
I don't like to move ball position because the bottom of the putting stroke is really going to be where the fulcrum is, right? So if I go like this, I put the ball up here, you know, and I go like that, the putter is still going to, you know, I think you're going to see a lot of backup. And I don't like to see the head going backward when the putter is going forward. I think that's really hard to manage for most people, right? Again, you know, I'm the simple guy. Like, I don't like a lot of technology. I like to get on a green and try to get something that's simple that someone can play golf with and take to the course. So I'm just trying to keep it as simple as possible. The more moving parts, the more opportunity there is for mistakes. That's the way I look at it, right?
Hey, Todd, this is great stuff. Really appreciate you sharing all this knowledge with us. Question about speed hierarchy versus start line or rolling it straight. Given the nature of what you talked about and what we see with a lot of higher handicap players with that same length backstroke, and then they either over accelerate or decelerate into the follow through.
They're changing their tempo.
Would you, depending on the level of player, would you change and maybe a high handicapper work on speed? Because I could see that stroke also affecting how the putter's going to move with path and face differential and that sort of thing. So do you change that up a little bit depending on the ability level of the player, or is it always roll it straight first and then go to speed?
I'm always rolling. Here's the reason I think that way. It's a great question. You know, you guys all hear the question. I guess you did with the speakers. But the reason I always go to roll it straight, centered contact first, is because I think that affects speed. So if I'm hitting it off the toe, mishitting it, that ball's going to roll differently than if I hit it solid. So if I can get someone rolling the ball properly off the center of the putter, it's going to roll at a different distance, given the same putter head speed, than if they mishit it. So and again, that's just my personal preference. And I found, like, even when my speed control is off, it's usually not my tempo, it's usually my mechanics. And so I'm mishitting the putt, it's not rolling out, the ball's not rolling properly, right? I mean, I can share with my stroke a little bit. I know, you know, I was in Texas, I don't know what it was, 3 or 4 months ago, and I was at Frisco and then looking at the new view system. And clearly I was taking my putter, it was coming way inside. It's coming to, not way inside, it's coming inside too much, right? And so, I could easily have gone, well, I need to take the putter straighter back, but all I have to do when I do that, it's my natural tendency is my hand gets in ulnar, right? And so if I go like this, the putter head goes back straight, or straighter. It's still on an arc, but it feels straight. By the way, here's something that's interesting, I think, talking about feeling real. So Steve Jones, we're at the Buick Invitational, right here, obviously, at Torrey Pines. And if you remember the putting arc, right, the VJ Trolla came out with. So a bunch of guys there was probably 4 or 5 of those putting arcs when they just came out. And I looked at that and I'm like, wow, that's awesome, because I was a big believer that the putter would swing in an arc. And I still am. But I said, Steve, that thing is awesome. We should try one of those. And he goes, those guys are fools. The putter swings in a straight line. He literally said that to me. And I go into my teaching dissertation of why the putter, and like he cut me off and he goes, I won the US Open. Right? And the putter goes in a straight line. I'm like, okay, in other words, shut up, Todd. But as I listened to Steve and his feel, he would tell you that he felt, when he putted well, all he felt was the back of his left hand. That's what his mind was on. It wasn't the putter head. And so you take Nicholas. Like, Nicholas talks a lot about the right palm, right? He's trying to keep his right wrist in his fixed position and keep the right palm moving toward the target. So I don't know what Nicholas feels, but I doubt he feels a lot of arc. You talk to Stan Utley, who's very in tune to the putter head, and he feels more putter head. So I think it's really interesting working with players and trying to figure out what feel they relate to and what they work with, and let them find their feels. Like, I feel when I putt well that my putter works in a straighter line than an arc. If I feel an arc, it's too much inside. But I know when I videotape it, the putter's just swinging in a very slight arc. So I think feels are really interesting. And but again, get someone in the right setup, and then start developing their skills, and you'll help them define their feels, what they can putt well with and putt well with under pressure, right?
All right, Todd, we have last question.
Yes. Where are we? Sorry. Okay, go ahead.
And so I love what you said early on in your presentation about how you don't ask people how they putt because you already know the answer.
Oh, yeah.
And I love how you go to the end of the lesson to show them their putting stroke.
Yeah.
Like from the right behind them with the phone. And I want to know, like, do you ever find that there's still resistance from the player to work on their putting because they don't think that it's the worst part of their game or needs improvement? And if there is any resistance, how you approach that?
That's a great question to end this on. So you're going to have resistance with some players, but that's why, one, I don't ask the question. I just let them look at how they're hitting the ball. Because you're right, most people will feel like, putting is not the priority because I can't keep the ball in play off the tee. And I always had this saying with my staff, give them what they want when they come to you till they trust you. Then you better give them what they need to become a better player to move the number on the scorecard. So there's definitely, sometimes I'm working with someone 6 months before I can get into the putter, but believe me, I'm going to get there sooner or later if they stay with me because I have to. And a lot of people that, you might even ask someone, you might show them that and say, do me a favor, just keep your total putts for a month. And let's look at that number. And a lot of times it's just you're trying to expose a problem that they don't realize they have a problem. But then, like I said, if you expose it and you're the solution, you're the hero. So, and don't be afraid, like I said, pull people's putter. They won't come to you and ask for putting help. You've got to learn to cultivate that. And you're planting seeds. You're pulling the putter out of the bag, and you're looking at them, and you're seeing if there's a potential problem there, right? You put that iPhone behind their putter, and you can see their impact, and you're like, okay, there's an opportunity here. So you're never going to force it. You're just going to lead them to say, I want it, right? It's just like when I sell a lot of putters. And I don't try to sell putters. I'm just honest with people. I'm like, look your putter fits you. It's all good. No problem. If your putter doesn't fit you, I'm going to make an effort. It's what's really like at a school, I would say the average, when I had 10 people, probably 50% on average walk away the putter. Sometimes 3, sometimes 8. 50 would probably be the average. But I would like it when I would have people at a school. If I got 10 people, if I had 3 or 4 with putters that fit them, I'd make a pretty loud example of them, like, look at your putter fits you, that's not a problem. So that when I walk up to the person that needs a putter and I tell them, you need a putter, they know I'm not just trying to sell everybody putters. I'm trying to sell putters to people that I know need them to help them. And what's interesting too, I'm aggressive with that. And I'm not afraid to be aggressive because it's my job. You know, if you went to an optometrist and they analyzed your eyes and he said, you need this pair of glasses, of course you'd buy it. He's being a professional, he's trying to help, because if you don't, you're not going to see straight, right, or clearly. So I consider equipment, and really throughout the whole bag, my job is to help people make sure the equipment in their bag is going to help them play their best golf. It's not the job of somebody else to do that. If I'm teaching you, it's my job to make sure your equipment helps you play your best. I believe so strongly in that. So, you know, don't be afraid to tell people the truth. And if they walk away, if someone walks away, this happened a lot of times from a school, and I'm like, you need a 33.5-inch putter or whatever, 30, whatever it is. This is what you need. I'll write the specs down. And some people, well, I wasn't prepared to buy a putter. I like my putter. Well, about a month after missing more putts and more awareness of that, they might call you up and say, you know, will you make me that putter? And there's people that I might have to push a little bit, but it's pretty cool when they call you and they say, you know what, I had the best putting day I've ever had. I shot the lowest score I've ever had, and I'm really glad you talked me into getting that putter. I mean, if it's going to help someone, don't be afraid to be aggressive, and if you know it's going to help someone. Don't be a salesman. A salesman is someone that just sells a putter. A professional is someone that sells a putter to help a player. It's a total different thing.
Thank you, Todd. Everybody, big hand. As you can see, he can keep on going on, and he will be probably be available up at the
Yeah, I'll be with these guys. And by the way, if you guys are anybody's interested in the whole system, you know, the team is up there with Zexio. The Zexio booth, Never Compromise.
Yeah. So Mike Kim is here. He's our regional. He wants to give a little information on that.
Thank you, guys. Just a real quick, some information for you as far as the dealership goes. You can see on the top of the table here, we have 10 putters that are raw at 37 inches, 1 per model and per finish. So it's 10 total putters that comes with the dealership. The whole concept, like as Todd was saying, it was to really get someone fit right away and walk away with a custom putter. So I don't know if you guys saw when I was building that putter, it literally took 5 minutes to do it. So we know the length, we know what grip you want and what way should go on. So it really the whole concept to get your members, your students getting fitted right then and there and walk away with a custom putter. So that's the whole concept. We kind of turn and burn it all the time. At the end of the life cycle, everything gets turned back to us for new models. So nothing that you'll be stuck with. I appreciate your guys' time and attention. And if you want to talk to us, we'll be at the booth over there in the mainstream area. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Zexio. Thank you, folks.